Lena Cross thought she had escaped her past, until the day her 4-year-old son looked up at the most dangerous man in the city and smiled. 5 years of silence, 5 years of running, all shattered in a crowded farmer's market when Victor Romano's dark eyes locked onto the child who carried his unmistakable features. The underworld boss she'd fled without explanation now stood before the truth she'd hidden. Evan was his son, and Victor Romano never forgave those who betrayed him. Some secrets destroy lives, others ignite wars. Lena was about to discover which kind hers would be. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below and hit that like button. I want to see how far Lena's story travels. Now, let's begin where everything fell apart. The Saturday morning sun filtered through the canvas canopies of the farmer's market, casting striped shadows across the cobblestone square. Lena Cross moved through the crowd with practiced efficiency, her hand firmly clasped around Evan's smaller one as they navigated between stalls overflowing with late summer produce. The air smelled of fresh basil and ripe peaches, and somewhere nearby, a street musician played acoustic guitar, the melody blending with the cheerful chaos of weekend shoppers. "Mama, can we get strawberries?" Evan tugged at her hand, his dark eyes so impossibly dark they were almost black, sparkling with 4-year-old enthusiasm. Lena smiled down at her son, her heart doing that familiar squeeze it always did when she looked at him. "Of course, baby. We'll get the biggest ones they have." It was a perfect morning, too perfect, perhaps. The kind of morning that made Lena almost believe she'd successfully outrun her past, that the quiet life she'd built in this anonymous city neighborhood was real and permanent. She'd been careful for 5 years. No social media, no contact with anyone from before, a different last name, a job at a diner where nobody asked questions. She'd become a ghost, and ghosts didn't get found. She should have known better. The shift in atmosphere was subtle at first, a ripple in the crowd's energy, conversations dropping to murmurs, heads turning toward the street. Lena felt it before she saw it, that old familiar tension that used to follow Victor Romano everywhere he went. Power had a presence, and his was unmistakable. The black SUV slid to a stop at the market's edge with predatory grace, its tinted windows reflecting the morning sun like dark mirrors. Lena's breath caught in her throat. She knew that vehicle, knew the statement it made, knew exactly who would emerge from it. "Mama?" Evan looked up at her, sensing her sudden stillness. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, sweetheart." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. "Let's go look at those strawberries." But it was too late. The rear door of the SUV opened and Victor Romano stepped out into the sunlight. 5 years hadn't diminished him. If anything, time had only sharpened the edges. His tall frame was still wrapped in that same casual elegance, the dark suit probably worth more than 3 months of Lena's rent. His black hair was perhaps slightly shorter now, touched with the faintest hint of silver at the temples that only made him more devastating. But it was his face that stopped her cold, those sharp, aristocratic features that could shift from charming to lethal in a heartbeat, the strong jaw she'd once traced with her fingers, the mouth that had promised her everything and delivered only darkness. And those eyes. Even from 30 feet away, she could see them scanning the crowd with the calculated precision of a man who missed nothing, who assessed every situation for threats and opportunities with the instinct of someone who'd survived at the top of a very violent world for a very long time. Lena's first instinct was to run, grab Evan and disappear into the crowd, fade back into the anonymity that had protected them for 5 years. She took a step backward, her grip on Evan's hand tightening. That was her mistake. The movement caught Victor's attention. Their eyes met across the market square, and Lena watched recognition flash across his face like lightning. For one frozen moment, the world seemed to stop. The crowd faded, the music disappeared, everything narrowed to that electric connection that had once consumed them both. Then Victor started walking toward her, and Lena's heart began to race. "Mama, you're hurting my hand," Evan complained, and Lena realized she'd been squeezing too hard. "I'm sorry, baby, She looked around frantically, searching for an escape route, but the crowd was too thick, the market too crowded. There was nowhere to go. Victor cut through the crowd like a shark through water, people instinctively stepping aside without even knowing why. His security detail, she could see them now, two large men in dark suits flanking him at a respectful distance, maintained a perimeter, but Victor himself seemed focused on only one thing. Her. Lena's mind raced. What would she say? How could she explain? 5 years of silence, 5 years of hiding, and now, Lena. Victor's voice was exactly as she remembered it, deep, controlled, with that underlying edge that suggested violence was always just beneath the surface. He stopped a few feet away, his dark eyes searching her face with an intensity that made her skin prickle. It's been a long time. Victor. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. I didn't know you'd be here. Clearly. His gaze flickered over her, taking in the worn jeans, the simple cotton blouse, the complete absence of the designer clothes he'd once draped her in. She saw something flash in his eyes. Disappointment? Anger? She couldn't tell. You look different. So do you. It wasn't true. He looked exactly the same, except, Mama? Evan tugged at her hand again, and Lena felt her world tilt on its axis. Who's that man? Victor's eyes dropped to Evan for the first time, and Lena watched the exact moment everything changed. She saw his gaze sharpen, saw him take in Evan's features, the dark eyes, the strong chin, the way his hair grew in that same stubborn cowlick that Victor always complained about. She watched him do the math, saw understanding dawn across his face like a coming storm. When Victor looked back at her, his expression had gone completely cold. How old is he? The question was quiet, deadly. Lena's mouth went dry. Victor, how old is he? 4. The word barely made it past her lips. He just turned 4. The silence that followed felt like the moment before an execution. Victor's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his skin. His hands, which had been relaxed at his sides, slowly curled into fists. 4 years old. His voice was soft now, which was infinitely more terrifying than if he'd shouted. You left 5 years ago, Lena. Without a word. Without an explanation. Just gone one morning like you'd never existed. And now you're standing here with a 4-year-old boy who has my eyes. Mr. Romano? One of his security guards stepped closer, clearly sensing the tension. Is everything... Leave us! Victor didn't even look at the man. His gaze remained locked on Lena, pinning her in place like a butterfly on a board. Everyone, now! The guards retreated immediately, creating a buffer zone around them. The nearby shoppers, sensing danger with that primal instinct people develop in Victor's world, began to drift away. Within moments, they stood in a bubble of forced privacy in the middle of the crowded market. Evan, bless him, seemed oblivious to the adult tension crackling in the air. He was staring up at Victor with open curiosity, the way children do when encountering something new and interesting. You're really tall, Evan announced. Are you a basketball player? Despite everything, Lena saw Victor's expression flicker, just for a moment, something that might have been surprise or even the ghost of amusement. Then the ice returned. No, Victor said, his voice gentling slightly as he addressed Evan. I'm not a basketball player. What's your name? Evan Michael Cross. Evan stuck out his hand with the formal politeness Lena had taught him. I'm 4 years old. Do you know my mama? Victor stared at the small hand extended toward him, and Lena saw something crack in his armor. Slowly, he crouched down to Evan's level, bringing himself eye to eye with the son he'd never known existed. When he shook Evan's hand, his massive palm completely engulfed the small fingers. Yes, Victor said quietly. I know your mama. We're old friends. Oh. Evan considered this. Mama doesn't have many friends. Just Miss Caroline from the diner and sometimes the library lady. Victor's eyes cut to Lena, and she saw the fury there, barely contained. Is that right? We should go, Lena said quickly, reaching for Evan. We have to... You're not going anywhere. Victor stood, his hand moving with casual precision to grip Lena's wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to convey absolute control. We need to talk, privately. I don't think... That wasn't a request, Lena. His thumb pressed against her pulse point, and she knew he could feel her heart racing. You owe me a conversation, at minimum. Not here. Not with my car. Now. Victor's voice dropped even lower. Unless you'd prefer to have this discussion right here in front of everyone, I can make quite a scene when motivated. Lena knew that tone. It was the one that meant arguing was pointless, that resistance would only make things worse. She'd heard it before, in another life, when Victor Romano got his way simply because the alternative was unthinkable. Evan, she said carefully, crouching down to her son's level, we're going to go with this man for a little while. Mama needs to talk to him about something. Okay. Evan seemed perfectly content with this arrangement. Can we still get strawberries after? Yes, baby, after. The walk to the SUV felt like a death march. Victor's hand remained on her wrist, a silent claim of ownership that made several passers-by glance at them nervously. His security detail materialized from the crowd, creating a protective corridor as they moved toward the vehicle. The interior of the SUV was exactly as Lena remembered. Black leather, tinted windows, the faint scent of expensive cologne and power. Victor guided her into the back seat with Evan, then climbed in beside them. One of the guards took the driver's seat, and the door closed with a heavy, final sound. For a moment, nobody spoke. Evan busied himself exploring the armrest controls, delighted when he found buttons that made the windows go up and down. Lena sat frozen, acutely aware of Victor's presence beside her, of the rage she could feel radiating off him in waves. Drive around, Victor told the driver. Don't stop until I say so. The SUV pulled smoothly into traffic. Victor pressed a button, and a privacy screen rose between the front and back seats, sealing them in their own private world. Then he turned to face Lena fully, and she saw the carefully maintained control beginning to fracture. Tell me I'm wrong, he said quietly. Tell me that somehow, impossibly, this child isn't mine. Lena's throat tightened. I can't tell you that. Look at me and say it. Say he's mine. She forced herself to meet his eyes, to face the judgment and fury there. He's yours, Victor. Evan is your son. The words hung in the air between them like an accusation. Victor's jaw clenched so hard she could hear his teeth grind. His hands gripped his knees, knuckles going white with the force of restraint. 5 years, he said, his voice shaking now with barely suppressed emotion. 5 years you kept him from me. 5 years you let me believe— He cut himself off, turning away to stare out the window. Did you ever plan to tell me? Or was I just supposed to never know I had a son? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Lena? Victor spun back to face her, and now the anger was breaking through, hot and dangerous. Explain to me how you justify this. Explain how you walked out of my life pregnant with my child and never said a word, never gave me a chance. Never— You want to talk about chances? The words burst out of Lena before she could stop them, her own anger rising to meet his. You want to discuss what you would have done if I told you I was pregnant 5 years ago? You would have locked me up. Her voice rose sharply, and Evan looked up from the window controls, his small face concerned. Lena forced herself to lower her voice. You would have put me in that penthouse fortress of yours and treated me like property. You would have surrounded me with security and made every decision about my body, my baby, my life. And you know it. Victor stared at her, his dark eyes blazing. I would have protected you, both of you. From what, Victor? From the world you created? The world where people get shot in the street over drug territories and business deals? Where a woman I met at one of your events ended up dead because she dated the wrong rival? You call that protection? I call it reality. My reality. And you knew what that was when you were with me. I knew what it was, Lena agreed, her voice breaking slightly. That's exactly why I left. I couldn't raise a child in that world. I couldn't watch my son grow up wondering if his father would come home each night or if he'd get a phone call saying you'd been killed. I couldn't— So you made the decision for both of us. Victor's voice was deadly quiet again. You decided I didn't deserve to know my own child. You decided I wouldn't be a good father. You decided everything, and I got no say. No choice. Nothing. Guilt twisted in Lena's stomach because he was right, at least partially. She had made those decisions alone, in the terrified darkness of a cheap motel room 3 states away, staring at a positive pregnancy test and knowing she could never go back. I was trying to protect him, she whispered. By keeping him from me. By raising him in, Victor gestured around them, encompassing everything they'd left behind at the market. What exactly have you given him, Lena? Based on those clothes you're wearing and the neighborhood where that farmer's market is located, I'm guessing it's not much. Does he go to a good school? Does he have everything he needs? Or have you been struggling, too proud or too scared to ask for help? The accuracy of his assessment stung. Lena worked double shifts at the diner most weeks just to keep them fed and housed. Evan's clothes came from thrift stores, his toys from garage sales. She'd had to put off a dental appointment for herself 3 times because she couldn't afford it. They were surviving, barely, but she'd told herself it was worth it for the safety of their anonymity. We manage, she said stiffly. You manage. Victor laughed, but there was no humor in it. My son is barely managing when he should have everything, when he should be... He stopped abruptly, looking at Evan, who was watching them both with worried eyes. The little boy's lower lip was trembling. Mama, are you fighting? Lena's heart broke. No, baby, we're just talking. It's okay. It sounds like fighting. You sound scared. Before Lena could respond, Victor moved. He unbuckled his seatbelt and shifted closer to Evan, his large frame somehow gentle as he positioned himself at the child's level. Hey, Victor said softly, and Lena heard something in his voice she'd never heard before. Uncertainty. Vulnerability. Your mom's not scared, buddy. We're just having a grown-up conversation. Sometimes grown-ups get loud when they talk about important things, but nobody's going to hurt anybody, okay? Evan studied Victor's face with that serious, analytical expression he got sometimes, the one that reminded Lena so forcefully of his father. It hurt. Promise? Evan asked. I promise. Victor held out his pinky finger, and after a moment's hesitation, Evan wrapped his own small pinky around it. There. That's a real promise. Can't break those. Despite everything, Lena felt tears prick her eyes. This was what she'd been afraid of, what had haunted her for 5 years. The inevitable moment when Victor's natural charisma, his ability to command loyalty and affection, would work its magic on their son. What's your name? Evan asked suddenly. I told you mine, but you didn't tell me yours. Victor glanced at Lena, and she saw the question in his eyes. She gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. What else could she do? Victor, he said, turning back to Evan. My name is Victor Romano. That's a cool name. Like a superhero. Evan considered this for a moment. Are you a superhero? No, I'm just a man who makes sure people keep their promises. Oh. Evan seemed to accept this explanation with the easy trust of childhood. Do you have any kids? The question landed like a physical blow. Lena watched Victor's expression shudder, watched him struggle with how to answer. Finally, he said, I do now. Evan frowned, confused. You just got them? Like from a store? Despite the tension, Victor's mouth twitched. No, not from a store. I just found out about them today. Oh, are you happy? Mama says kids are the best thing ever. Victor's eyes cut to Lena, holding her gaze as he answered. Think I will be, once I figure everything out. The SUV continued to glide through the city streets, passing from the modest neighborhood where Lena had been shopping into increasingly affluent areas. Lena recognized the route. Victor was taking them toward the waterfront, toward the exclusive district where his penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming tower. Where are we going? She asked, though she already knew. My place, where we can talk without worrying about little ears. Victor nodded toward Evan, who had returned to playing with the window controls. I have it set up for, well, not for children, but we can work with it. Victor, I can't just... Yes, he interrupted, his voice firm. You can. You will. Because we are going to have a very long conversation about the last 5 years, about my son, and about what happens next. And we're going to have it somewhere private where I won't be tempted to do something that would traumatize the child. The underlying threat in his words made Lena's pulse spike. Are you threatening me? I'm stating facts. Victor leaned back in his seat, his posture deceptively relaxed. You've had 5 years to make decisions, Lena. Now it's my turn. And unlike you, I'm willing to have the hard conversations face to face instead of running away in the middle of the night. The barb hit home, and Lena felt her cheeks flush. She wanted to argue, wanted to defend her choices, but what could she say? Everything he'd accused her of was true. She had run, she had hidden, she had made unilateral decisions about their child's life without giving him any input, but she'd also kept Evan safe. He'd never witnessed violence, never been exposed to the darkness that followed Victor everywhere he went. Her son had a normal childhood, or as normal as poverty allowed. The SUV pulled into the underground parking garage of Victor's building, and Lena felt a wave of remembered anxiety. How many times had she made the same journey, knowing she was entering a world where Victor's word was law, where his power was absolute? She'd thought she was done with this feeling, this sense of helplessness in the face of his overwhelming presence. The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent except for Evan's excited chatter about how high they were going. Victor listened to him with an attention that seemed almost hungry, as if trying to absorb every detail about this child who'd appeared in his life so suddenly. When the elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse, Lena steeled herself. But stepping into that familiar space was like stepping back in time. The floor-to-ceiling windows still offered their breathtaking view of the city and harbor. The furniture was different, more modern now, sleeker, but the essential character of the space remained: masculine, controlled, expensive, and absolutely impersonal except for the art on the walls. "Wow," Evan breathed, running to the windows. "Mama, look how high we are. I can see everything." "Stay away from the glass, baby," Lena called automatically. "He's fine." Victor moved to a panel on the wall and pressed a button. Instantly, a subtle shimmer appeared on the windows, some kind of safety film or protective barrier. They're reinforced, a truck couldn't break through them, let alone a small child. Of course they were. In Victor's world, every surface was armor, every entrance a potential breach point. Lena remembered how suffocating that constant vigilance had felt, how exhausting it was to live in a state of perpetual defensive readiness. "Marcus," Victor spoke into an intercom. "Send someone to get children's items. Age 4, boy. Toys, snacks, whatever kids that age need. And lunch. Something a child would actually eat, not the usual menu." "Right away, Mr. Romano." The response was immediate, efficient. Victor turned to face Lena, and she saw that the rage from earlier had crystallized into something harder, more controlled, and far more dangerous. "Evan," he called to the boy, still entranced by the view, "why don't you explore a bit? Just stay in this room where we can see you." Evan nodded absently, already moving along the windows to get different vantage points of the city below. Victor gestured toward the seating area, a collection of low-leather sofas arranged around a glass coffee table. "Sit. We're going to talk, and you're going to tell me everything." Lena sat, her body remembering how to position itself in these spaces, how to appear smaller, less threatening. Old habits from when she'd tried to navigate Victor's world without drowning in it. Victor didn't sit. He stood in front of her, arms crossed, a position of dominance and interrogation. "Start at the beginning," he said. "The morning you left. Tell me why." Lena took a shaky breath. "I woke up and I knew I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't be the woman waiting at home while you went out to handle business. Couldn't smile at the parties while everyone pretended not to know what you really did. Couldn't... You knew what I did when we met, when you moved in here. That didn't suddenly change." "No, but I did." Lena looked up at him, willing him to understand. "I started to see the reality behind the illusion. Started to notice the blood on the edges of your perfectly tailored suits. Started to realize that every luxury I enjoyed came with a price tag paid by someone else's suffering." "Spare me the moral awakening speech." Victor's voice was cold. "We both know you enjoyed the benefits of my life while you were here. The clothes, the jewels, the security. I'm not claiming I was innocent." Lena's voice rose. "I know I was complicit. I know I benefited. That's exactly why I had to leave, because I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, someone who could overlook terrible things because they didn't directly affect me." "And the pregnancy? When did you find out?" Lena swallowed hard. "A week after I left. I'd been feeling sick, thought it was stress from running. Did a test in a gas station bathroom 3 states away." She watched Victor's hands tighten into fists, watched him process the image of her alone, scared, taking that test without him there. You could have come back then. Could have told me. And you would have hunted me down if I hadn't? Lena challenged. Be honest, Victor. If I told you I was pregnant and still said I wanted to leave, what would you have done? The silence that followed was damning. They both knew the answer. Victor would have never let her go, pregnant or not. He would have used every resource at his disposal to keep her, to control the situation, to ensure his child was born under his protection and his rules. I would have taken care of you, Victor said finally. Both of you. You would have had the best medical care, the safest environment. A cage is still a cage, Victor, even if it's gilded. And what you gave him instead? Victor gestured toward Evan. Living paycheck to paycheck, I'm guessing. What kind of apartment do you have? One bedroom? How do you afford health care? What happens if there's an emergency and you can't cover it? Each question was a knife, precise and brutal. Lena felt herself shrinking under the assault because every word was true. She'd struggled constantly, lived in fear of anything going wrong because she had no safety net, no resources to fall back on. I kept him safe, she whispered. You kept him poor. Victor's voice was merciless. You kept him from his father. You kept him from a life where he could have everything he needed and more. And you did it because of your own fear and your own judgments about my life. Your life gets people killed. The shout made Evan look over, concern creasing his small face. Lena forced herself to lower her voice. Your life is violence, Victor. It's death and danger, and it's also power, Victor interrupted. It's also protection stronger than any law can provide. It's also the ability to ensure my family never wants for anything. Yes, there are risks. Yes, there's darkness. But there's also security and strength and... He stopped, taking a visible breath to control himself. You made a choice for our son without knowing if I would have been a good father or not. You never gave me the chance to prove I could protect him, provide for him, love him. You just decided I wasn't worthy. The pain in his voice caught Lena off guard. She'd expected anger, threats, demands, but this raw hurt, this glimpse of genuine emotion beneath Victor's usual armor, that was harder to face. I was scared, she admitted quietly. I was terrified of bringing a child into your world, into the violence. And I was terrified that if I stayed, I'd lose myself completely, that I'd become so dependent on you, so molded to fit into your life, that I'd forget who I was. And then I'd be useless to our child, just another ornament in your collection. Victor stared at her for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, he sat down across from her, his posture shifting from aggressive to something almost defeated. You really think that's all you were to me? He asked quietly. An ornament? Lena hesitated. Weren't I? No. The single word carried weight. You were the only person in my life who saw me as something other than Victor Romano, crime boss and enforcer. You were the one space where I could be something close to normal. Do you think I let just anyone into this place? Into my private spaces? You were... He cut himself off, jaw tightening. It doesn't matter now. You made your choice. Before Lena could respond, there was a discreet chime from the elevator. Victor stood quickly, moving to intercept whoever was arriving before they could fully enter the penthouse. A young woman in professional attire stood in the elevator holding several shopping bags, her eyes carefully averted from the interior of the penthouse, clearly staff who knew better than to look too closely at Victor's private business. Mr. Romano, the items you requested. She held out the bags without making eye contact. Leave them there. And the food? Being prepared now, sir. 20 minutes. Good. You can go. The elevator doors closed and Victor carried the bags into the living area. He opened them one by one. Toys, coloring books, crayons, a stuffed animal shaped like a lion, juice boxes, and packages of what looked like cookies. Evan, Victor called. Come see what I got for you. Evan rushed over with the enthusiasm of any 4-year-old presented with new toys. His eyes went wide as Victor unpacked everything, laying it out on the coffee table like offerings. For me? Evan asked, disbelieving. All for you. But why? It's not my birthday. Victor glanced at Lena, something complicated passing across his face. Because I missed your last 4 birthdays. This is me starting to make up for that. Evan didn't understand the subtext, but he was thrilled nonetheless. He dove into the toys, pulling out action figures, and immediately beginning an elaborate imaginary game. Victor watched him with an intensity that made Lena's chest ache. She could see him cataloging every detail, the way Evan's face scrunched up in concentration, the animated sound effects he made, the unconscious grace in his movements that echoed Victor's own physicality. "He has your mannerisms," Victor said softly, not looking away from Evan. "The way he tilts his head when he's thinking, the way he gestures with his hands when he's excited. I can see myself in him." "I know." "Did you?" Victor finally turned to look at her. "Did you see me every time you looked at him? Did it make you regret leaving, or did you try to pretend those parts of him didn't exist?" "I saw you," Lena admitted, "every single day, and it was hard, but I never regretted him, not for a second. Just regretted me. I regretted us, the situation, the impossibility of it all." Victor was quiet for a moment, watching Evan play. Then he said, "Here's what's going to happen. You and Evan are moving in here, today." "What? No, absolutely not." "It's not a negotiation, Lena." Victor's voice was calm, factual. "My son is not going back to whatever inadequate situation you've been living in. He's going to be here, where he's safe, where he has everything he needs, where I can get to know him. You can't just—" "I can, and I am." Victor leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his dark eyes boring into hers. "You kept him from me for 5 years. Don't expect me to be patient about making up for lost time. You want to argue about custody, about rights? I have lawyers who will bury you. I have resources you can't even imagine. And unlike you, I'm not afraid to use every advantage I have to ensure I get what I want. And what I want is my son in my life, permanently." "This is exactly what I was afraid of." Lena stood abruptly, her hands shaking with anger and fear. "You're trying to control everything, make all the decisions. Someone has to make decisions since you've proven your judgment is questionable at best." Victor stood as well, towering over her. "You made choices out of fear and selfishness. I'm making choices out of what's best for Evan. He deserves stability, security, opportunity. I can provide all of that." "What can you provide, Lena? More struggling, more barely making ends meet, more hiding from the world." "I can provide a normal life, a life where he's not surrounded by criminals and violence." "Mama?" Evan's small voice cut through their argument. He was standing now, clutching the stuffed lion, his eyes brimming with tears. "Please don't yell. I don't like it when people yell." Both adults froze. Lena immediately went to Evan, kneeling down to pull him into a hug. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. We shouldn't have raised our voices." "Are you mad at Victor?" Lena looked up at Victor over Evan's head and saw her own guilt reflected in his face. "No, sweetheart. We're just trying to figure some things out. Grown-up stuff." "Does he have to leave?" Evan asked, and the question clearly surprised Victor. "I like him. He gave me toys, and he's really tall. Can he stay?" Lena's heart cracked a little. Of course Evan would be drawn to Victor. He'd never had a father figure, never had a man pay attention to him the way Victor had in just the last hour. How could she explain that the man offering toys and kindness was also the man whose world was built on violence and fear? "I'm not going anywhere," Victor said before Lena could answer. He moved closer, crouching down to Evan's level again. "In fact, I was hoping you and your mama might want to stay here for a while. Would you like that? This place has lots of rooms. You could even have your own room with all your toys." Evan's face lit up. "Really? My own room? I've never had my own room before. Mama and I share at our apartment." Lena saw Victor's expression harden at this revelation, saw judgment flash in his eyes at the reality of how they'd been living. "Well, you'd have your own room here," Victor continued, "and we could get you more toys. Whatever you want. And I could teach you things. Do you like games? Sports?" "I like drawing, and Mama reads to me every night, and I'm learning my letters." "I could read to you too, and we could draw together. Would you like that?" Evan nodded enthusiastically, then looked at Lena with pleading eyes. "Can we, Mama? Please?" How was she supposed to say no to that? How was she supposed to explain to her 4-year-old that the nice man offering them everything was also a dangerous man whose world she'd fled in fear? But looking at Victor now, at the careful gentleness in his expression as he interacted with Evan, at the hunger in his eyes for connection with his son, Lena realized that maybe she'd been wrong about one thing. Maybe Victor could love their child. Maybe he already did, after just this short time. The question was, could she survive being pulled back into his orbit? Could she maintain her own identity, her own agency, while living in Victor Romano's world? And did she have any choice? "We need to talk about this more," Lena said carefully. "In private. Can we do that?" Victor nodded. He stood, addressing Evan again. "Why don't you play with your new toys for a bit? Your mama and I are going to talk in the other room. We'll be able to see you the whole time, okay? Right through that glass." He pointed to his study, which had a glass wall overlooking the main living area. "Okay, but you'll come back?" "I promise." Victor led Lena into the study, leaving the door open so they could see Evan playing with his new toys. The moment they had relative privacy, Victor turned on her. "We're not going to keep doing this back and forth in front of him. It's confusing him." "I agree, but Victor, you can't just demand we move in here. That's insane." "What's insane is you thinking you can keep living the way you have been. What happens when Evan needs medical care you can't afford? What happens when he starts school and needs supplies, field trips, all the things kids need? What happens when your car breaks down, or you lose your job and you can't make rent?" Victor's voice was low but intense. "You're one disaster away from losing everything, Lena. One emergency from having to choose between feeding your child and keeping a roof over his head. Is that really better than accepting my help? Your help comes with strings. It always does." "Of course it does. Everything comes with strings. The difference is my strings come with security, with resources, with the guarantee that my son will never go without. What do your strings offer except the illusion of independence while you struggle?" Lena wanted to argue, but she couldn't, because he was right. She'd been living on a knife's edge for 5 years, one catastrophe away from total disaster. She'd told herself it was worth it for freedom. But was that true? Or had she just been too proud to admit she needed help? "If we stay," she said slowly, "there have to be conditions, rules." "I'm listening." "I want my own space. Evan and I stay in our own rooms. This doesn't become some kind of forced family situation where you dictate our entire lives." "Agreed. You'll have the second floor, complete privacy." "I want to keep working. I'm not going to sit around being decorative while you run your empire." Victor's jaw tightened. "That diner job is beneath you. That diner job kept us fed for 5 years. Don't insult it." "Fine. Keep it if you want, though I don't understand why you'd choose to serve coffee to strangers when you could." He stopped himself. "Never mind. What else?" "Evan doesn't get exposed to your business, ever. If you have meetings, if you have to deal with whatever you deal with, it doesn't happen around him." "Obviously. Do you think I'm an idiot? My son will be completely separate from that aspect of my life. And if people come after you, if there's violence because of what you do, what then, Victor?" He stepped closer to her, and Lena felt the wall press against her back. She hadn't even realized she'd been retreating. "Then they'll learn what happens when you threaten something I care about," Victor said quietly. "I have enemies, yes, but I also have power, and I promise you, Lena, nothing and no one will touch our son. I will burn this entire city down before I let anyone harm him." The intensity in his voice, the absolute conviction, should have scared her. Instead, Lena felt something else, a treacherous warmth, the memory of what it felt like to be under Victor Romano's protection, to know that his considerable power stood between her and any threat. "You can't promise perfect safety," she whispered. "No, but I can promise to do everything in my power to protect him. Can you say the same? You, alone, with no resources and no backup? What happens if someone from your past recognizes you? If someone figures out who you used to be and decides that makes you a target? At least here, with me, you have security, protection, my strength." Lena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 5 years of fear and struggle pressing down on her. She was so tired. Tired of being scared, tired of barely making it, tired of the constant stress of trying to be enough for Evan when she knew she was falling short. 1 month, she heard herself say, We'll stay for 1 month, trial basis. If it doesn't work, it will work. Victor's hand came up to cup her face, tilting it up toward him. Because I will make sure it works, for Evan's sake, if nothing else. His touch sent electricity through her, awakening memories she'd tried so hard to bury. This was dangerous, being this close to him, feeling the pull of his presence again. Victor. I know. He stepped back abruptly, his hand falling away. I know what this isn't. You don't need to spell it out. This is about Evan, not about us. I understand that. Did she imagine the hurt in his voice? The suggestion that maybe, despite everything, he'd hoped for something more? I need to call the diner, tell them I won't be in for my shift tomorrow, and we need to get our things from the apartment. I'll have someone pack everything and bring it here. Give me the address. I can pack my own belongings. You can, but why would you when I can have it done professionally and efficiently? Unless you have something there you don't want me to see. Lena thought of their small apartment, the worn furniture, the hand-me-down clothes, the evidence of just how far she'd fallen from the life she'd once lived with Victor. Pride made her want to refuse, to maintain control over this one small thing. But practicality won out. Fine. But nothing gets thrown away without my approval. Agreed. They stood there for a moment, the weight of the day pressing down on them both. Through the glass they could see Evan happily playing, completely oblivious to how drastically his life had just changed. He's incredible, Victor said softly, his eyes on his son. Even knowing him for less than 2 hours, I can see it. He's smart, kind, curious. You did well with him, Lena. Whatever else I might think about your choices, you raised a good kid. The acknowledgement, unexpected and genuine, brought tears to Lena's eyes. Thank you. But now he gets the best of both worlds. Your love and guidance and my resources and protection. Together, we can give him everything. Together. The word hung between them, loaded with possibilities and dangers, and the complicated history they shared. This doesn't mean we're together, Lena felt compelled to clarify. You understand that, right? This is co-parenting, nothing more. Victor's expression was unreadable. Of course. Nothing more. But the way he was looking at her, the intensity in his gaze suggested he didn't fully accept that limitation. And if Lena was honest with herself, a traitorous part of her didn't fully accept it either. Which was terrifying, because falling back into Victor Romano's orbit once had nearly destroyed her. Doing it again, especially with Evan in the mix, could be catastrophic for all of them. But what choice did she have now? He'd found them. He knew about Evan, and he was right about one thing. His resources could give their son opportunities she could never provide alone. She just had to figure out how to protect her heart in the process. The first night in Victor's penthouse felt surreal. Lena stood in the doorway of what was now Evan's bedroom, a space that had been transformed in mere hours from a sterile guest room into something resembling a child's paradise. The efficiency with which Victor's staff had worked was almost frightening. They'd brought furniture, bedding with dinosaur patterns that Evan had pointed to excitedly in a catalog, bookshelves already stocked with age-appropriate books, and a toy chest that was rapidly filling with new acquisitions. Their belongings from the apartment had arrived in neat boxes, looking somehow shabby and out of place in the luxury surroundings. Lena had unpacked Evan's favorite stuffed rabbit, the one with the missing eye that she'd sewn back on 3 times, and placed it carefully on the new bed. At least something familiar would be here for him. "Mama, look," Evan called from where he was exploring the attached bathroom. "The bathtub is huge! Can we put bubbles in it?" "Of course, baby." Lena managed a smile, trying to project calm she didn't feel. "Let's get you ready for bed, okay? It's been a very long day." "But I'm not tired." Even as he said it, Evan yawned hugely, betraying his words. "Bath first, then pajamas, then we'll read a story." "Will Victor read with us?" The question stopped Lena cold. In the chaos of moving in, of trying to establish some semblance of normalcy, she hadn't thought about how quickly Evan would try to incorporate Victor into their routine. "I don't know if he's available, sweetheart. He's probably busy with work stuff." "I'm available." Lena turned to find Victor standing in the hallway, still dressed in his suit though he'd removed the jacket and loosened his tie. He looked somehow different in this context, less the intimidating crime boss and more just a man standing in a doorway, uncertain. I finished the calls I needed to make, Victor continued. If the offer still stands, I'd like to be part of bedtime, if that's okay. He was asking permission. Victor Romano, who commanded absolute obedience from everyone in his world, was asking if he could read to his son. The vulnerability in the gesture made Lena's throat tight. Of course, she heard herself say. Evan would love that. The next hour was strange and wonderful and painful all at once. Victor sat on the edge of Evan's new bed, his large frame somehow gentle as he held the picture book Evan had selected. His deep voice softened as he read about a brave little truck that could, and Lena watched from the doorway as Evan's eyes grew heavy, his small body relaxing against the pillows. And the little truck said, I think I can, I think I can, Victor read, his hand smoothing Evan's hair back from his forehead, in a gesture so naturally paternal it made Lena's chest ache. By the time the story ended, Evan was nearly asleep. Victor closed the book carefully, setting it on the nightstand. Good night, Evan, he said softly. Night, Victor. Evan's words were muzzy with sleep. Will you be here tomorrow? I'll be here, I promise. Good. I like having you here. Lena saw Victor's jaw tighten with emotion. He stood carefully, not wanting to disturb Evan, and moved toward the door where Lena waited. Together they stepped into the hallway, leaving the door cracked so they could hear if Evan called out. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hallway felt too intimate, too quiet, with just the two of them standing close enough that Lena could smell his cologne. That same scent she remembered from 5 years ago, woodsy and expensive and distinctly him. Thank you, Victor said finally, for letting me be part of that. He's your son. You don't need my permission to read him a bedtime story. Don't I? Victor's dark eyes searched her face. You've had him to yourself for 4 years. Every bedtime, every morning, every scraped knee and bad dream. I'm the intruder here, Lena. We both know it. The honesty in his words surprised her. You're not an intruder, you're his father. I'm sorry you missed so much. I am. But we can't change the past. We can only move forward. Forward into what exactly? What does this look like? You and me trying to raise him together when we can barely be in the same room without fighting? Lena leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. I don't know. We figure it out as we go, I guess. Set boundaries, communicate. Try not to let our personal issues affect him. Our personal issues? Victor's mouth twisted. Is that what we're calling it? What would you call it? Unfinished business. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Lena's pulse quickened. Victor, I'm not trying to start anything, he interrupted. I'm just being honest. You left without explanation, without closure, and now you're back. And I'm supposed to just… What? Pretend we're friendly co-parents with no history? Pretend I don't remember every detail of the 2 years we spent together? Pretend I didn't spend months trying to find you, wondering what I'd done wrong? Lena's breath caught. You looked for me? Of course I looked for you. Victor's voice was rough. I tore this city apart trying to find you. I had people searching 3 states in every direction. I called in every favor I had. And you just vanished like you'd never existed. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I had to disappear completely. I knew if I left any trail, I would find you. Yes, you were right about that. Victor stepped closer, and Lena found herself pressed back against the wall. But finding you now, like this, learning about Evan, it's not closure, Lena. It's just opening up all the old wounds again. I know. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. I'm sorry for all of it. For the pain I caused you, for keeping Evan from you. I thought I was doing the right thing, but maybe I was just being a coward. You were scared. I understand that now. Victor's hand came up to brace against the wall beside her head, caging her in. But we're past that now. We're here, together, whether we planned it or not. So we need to decide what this is going to be. Co-parents, Lena said firmly, even as her body betrayed her with its response to his nearness. That's all we can be. Why? Because anything else would be a disaster. We didn't work before, Victor. What makes you think we'd work now? Maybe because everything is different now. I'm different, you're different, and we have Evan, which changes everything. Having a child together doesn't mean we should be together. Doesn't it? Victor's other hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. We created something beautiful together, Lena. We made a perfect little boy who has your stubbornness and my eyes. Doesn't that count for something? It counts for co-parenting, for putting him first, not for... She broke off as Victor leaned closer, his breath warm against her skin. Not for what? Not for admitting that there's still something between us? Not for acknowledging that I spent 5 years trying to forget you and failing? Not for recognizing that having you back in my space, in my life, is making me remember exactly why I couldn't let you go the first time? Lena's heart was racing now, her body responding to his proximity in ways her mind screamed were dangerous. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You trying to control everything, including me. I'm not trying to control you. Victor's voice dropped lower, intimate. I'm trying to understand what you want. Because I know what I want. I've always known. The question is whether you're brave enough to be honest about what you want. Before Lena could answer, a soft sound from Evan's room made them both freeze. Victor stepped back immediately, the moment broken. They waited in silence, but Evan was just shifting in his sleep, not calling out. Victor ran a hand through his hair, his control visibly reasserting itself. You should get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be complicated. What happens tomorrow? We start figuring out how this works, schedules, routines, all of it, and I need to make some calls, put certain security measures in place now that I have a son to protect. The reminder of Victor's world, the danger inherent in it, was like cold water. What kind of security measures? Nothing that will impact Evan's daily life. But people need to know that my family is off limits, completely untouchable. Anyone who even thinks about using him to get to me needs to understand the consequences would be terminal. Lena shivered at the casual menace in his words. This was the Victor she'd fled from, the one who spoke of violence like it was just another business transaction. I don't want him growing up afraid. He won't be. Fear comes from weakness, from vulnerability. My son will never be vulnerable. I'll make sure of it. By what? Teaching him to be like you? To see the world as something to dominate and control? Victor's expression hardened. I'll teach him to protect himself and the people he loves. I'll teach him that strength matters, that power is the only thing that keeps you safe in a dangerous world. And yes, if necessary, I'll teach him that sometimes violence is the answer when someone threatens what's yours. He's 4 years old. He won't be 4 forever. And when he's older, he'll need to understand the reality of who his father is, what that means, and how to navigate it safely. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. This is exactly why I left. This worldview, this acceptance of violence as normal. It is normal. In my world, it's survival. Victor's voice softened slightly. But I'm not going to expose him to it. Not until he's old enough to understand it. Until then, he gets to be a kid. A safe, happy kid who has everything he needs. Isn't that what you want? I want him to be good, to be kind, to see the world as something more than a battlefield. Then teach him that. You have your values, I have mine. Together, maybe we give him a balanced perspective. It wasn't the answer Lena wanted, but it was probably the best she was going to get. Victor Romano wasn't going to suddenly transform into a peaceful man. His nature was rooted in power and control, in the use of force to protect what he valued. She'd known that when she was with him before, and she knew it now. The question was whether she could live with it for Evan's sake. I'm going to bed, she said quietly. My room is where exactly? Next to Evan's. Connecting door if you want to leave it open. Victor gestured down the hallway. Everything you should need is already there. If you want anything else, just ask. I'll be fine. Lena. He caught her arm as she turned to go. I know this isn't what you wanted, coming back here, being in this situation. But I meant what I said earlier. I will do everything in my power to make this work, for Evan's sake and for yours. And what about for your sake? Victor's smile was slight, tinged with something that looked like old pain. I got what I wanted. My son under my roof, safe and protected. Everything else is secondary. But the way he was looking at her suggested that wasn't entirely true. Lena pulled her arm free and walked to her room, aware of Victor's eyes following her until she closed the door. Only then did she allow herself to lean against it, her body trembling with the weight of everything that had happened. One day. It had been one day since Victor walked back into her life, and already everything was upside down. She was living in his penthouse, their son was sleeping in a room that probably cost more than a year of her salary, and Victor was looking at her like 5 years hadn't passed, like the wounds between them weren't still raw and bleeding. She pushed off the door and surveyed her new room. Like everything in Victor's world, it was beautiful and impersonal. A queen bed with expensive linens, minimalist furniture, a bathroom with a shower that could probably fit 6 people. Her meager possessions looked lost in all that space. Lena changed into pajamas, worn cotton that felt almost offensive against the luxury sheets, and tried to sleep. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Victor's face. The anger when he'd learned about Evan, the tenderness when he'd read to their son, the hunger when he'd stood too close in the hallway. This was going to be harder than she'd thought. The next morning arrived too soon, announced by Evan's excited voice calling from his room. Lena stumbled out of bed, disoriented for a moment by the unfamiliar surroundings, then remembered where she was. She found Evan in the kitchen, sitting at the massive island while Victor stood at the stove making what appeared to be pancakes. The domestic scene was so unexpected that Lena stopped in the doorway, staring. "Mama!" Evan waved enthusiastically. "Victor's making pancakes. He says he can make them into shapes. Can he make a dinosaur?" Victor glanced over his shoulder, his eyes tracking over Lena's sleep-disheveled state in a way that made her acutely aware she wasn't wearing a bra under her thin pajama shirt. "Good morning," he said, his voice neutral. "Coffee's ready if you want some." "Thanks." Lena moved into the kitchen, hyper-aware of Victor's presence, of the way his eyes followed her as she poured coffee from the expensive machine on the counter. "I didn't know you cooked." "I don't, usually, but I figured Evan might like pancakes and the staff doesn't arrive until 8. You have staff?" "A chef who comes in for dinner, housekeeping twice a week, and Marcus who handles everything else. But mornings are usually quiet." Victor returned his attention to the griddle. "Dinosaur pancake coming up." Lena watched him work, noticing the careful precision in his movements, the way he'd clearly looked up how to make shaped pancakes and was following the instructions exactly. It was so at odds with his usual command that she felt her defenses soften slightly. "Can I help?" "You can sit with Evan. Talk to me about his routine. What time he usually eats, naps if he still does, activities he likes. I need to understand his schedule." Of course he did. Victor approached fatherhood the same way he approached everything else, methodically, gathering information, establishing control. Lena sat on the stool next to Evan, pulling him close for a good morning hug. "He doesn't nap anymore unless he's sick," she began. "He usually wakes up around 7, has breakfast, then we do some learning activities, letters, numbers, that kind of thing. I was going to enroll him in pre-K this fall, but..." She stopped, realizing that plan was probably obsolete now. "He'll go to the best program in the city," Victor said firmly. "I'll have Marcus research options." "I can research options." "You can. Or you can let me handle it since I have connections that can get him into programs that usually have waiting lists years long." Lena bristled at the implication that her research wouldn't be good enough, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Pick your battles," she reminded herself. "Fine, but I want to be part of the decision." "Of course." Victor slid a plate in front of Evan with a surprisingly accurate dinosaur-shaped pancake on it. Evan's face lit up with delight. "It's a T-Rex. Look, Mama, it has little arms." "I see. It's very impressive." Lena looked at Victor, who was trying to hide what might have been pleasure at Evan's reaction. "Thank you." "You're welcome." He poured more batter onto the griddle. "Regular shape okay for you?" "Whatever's easiest." They settled into an awkward breakfast rhythm, Evan chattering happily about his new room, while Lena and Victor exchanged careful, polite conversation like strangers forced together by circumstance. Which, Lena supposed, was exactly what they were now. 2 people bound by a child, trying to figure out how to exist in the same space without destroying each other. "I need to go to work today," Lena said finally. "My shift starts at 11. Victor's jaw tightened. "I thought we discussed this." "We discussed that I wanted to keep working. You didn't agree, but that doesn't mean I'm quitting." "Lena, Mama has to work." Evan said, syrup on his chin. That's how we pay for things. Not anymore, Victor said, his eyes still on Lena. Evan, your mama doesn't need to work at the diner anymore. I can pay for everything you need. But I like it when mama brings me pie, Evan said, confused. Lena felt anger surge through her. Don't use him to manipulate me. I'm not manipulating anyone. I'm stating facts. You don't need that job anymore. Maybe I want it. Maybe it's important to me to contribute, to maintain some independence. Independence from what? From me providing for my family? From being completely dependent on you for everything. Evan's face crumpled at their raised voices. Are you fighting again? Both adults stopped immediately. Lena took a breath, forcing calm into her voice. No, baby. We're just discussing something. Adults can disagree without fighting. It sounds like fighting, Evan said quietly. Victor moved around the island, crouching next to Evan's chair. You're right. We're being too loud. I'm sorry. Your mama and I are still learning how to talk to each other about things. You should use inside voices. That's what my teacher says at playgroup. That's very good advice. Victor glanced at Lena. We'll try to do better. After breakfast, Victor had to take some calls in his study. Lena used the time to shower and change, then helped Evan get dressed for the day. She was in his room, helping him pick out clothes from the new wardrobe that had been stocked overnight, when there was a knock on the door frame. A woman stood there, probably in her 50s, with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. Miss Cross? I'm Maria. Mr. Romano asked me to introduce myself. I'll be helping with Evan while you're at work. Lena stiffened. I didn't agree to a nanny. Oh, I'm not a nanny, more of a household assistant. Mr. Romano thought you might need help transitioning, so I'm here if you need anything. But if you'd rather I go… No, I'm sorry. Lena forced herself to relax. That was rude. It's just been a very overwhelming few days. I understand completely. Maria's smile was genuine. I raised 3 boys of my own. I know how it is. But I'm here to help, not interfere. Whatever you need. Despite her initial resistance, Lena found herself grateful for Maria's presence. The older woman had a warmth that made the sterile penthouse feel slightly more welcoming, and Evan took to her immediately, showing her all his new toys with enthusiastic pride. At 10:30, Lena prepared to leave for her shift. She'd changed into her work uniform, a simple black dress and apron, and was pulling her hair back when Victor emerged from his study. You're really going? It wasn't a question. I told you I was. I could have someone drive you. I can take the bus like I always do. Not anymore. You're living here now. That makes you a potential target. Victor pulled out his phone. Marcus will drive you. He'll wait and bring you back when your shift ends. Victor, this isn't negotiable, Lena. You want to work? Fine. But you're going to do it safely. Marcus will be discreet. No one will even know he's there unless there's a problem. Lena wanted to argue, but she saw the immovable set to Victor's jaw. This was one of those things he wouldn't bend on. Fine. But he stays outside. I don't want him hovering while I'm working. Agreed. Marcus turned out to be the same man who'd driven them yesterday. Professional, quiet, and surprisingly good at being invisible. He dropped Lena at the diner without comment, then positioned himself across the street where he could watch the entrance. The diner was the same as always. Busy lunch rush, demanding customers. The familiar chaos that Lena had navigated for 5 years. Her coworker Caroline cornered her the moment she had a chance. Where were you yesterday? You never miss shifts without calling. Family emergency. I'm sorry, I should have called earlier. Everything okay? Lena thought about how to answer that. Was everything okay? Her entire life had been turned upside down. She was living with her ex-lover, who also happened to be a crime boss, and their son was being showered with luxuries she could never have provided. It's complicated, she settled on. Complicated how? You look stressed. Just some stuff I need to figure out. But I'm fine. Except she wasn't fine. As the shift went on, Lena found herself increasingly distracted. She kept thinking about Evan back at the penthouse, wondering what he and Maria were doing, whether Victor had come out of his study to spend time with him. She kept thinking about this morning's argument, about the way Victor looked at her, about how easily she could fall back into his orbit if she wasn't careful. When her shift finally ended, Marcus was waiting exactly where she'd left him. The drive back to the penthouse was quiet, giving Lena time to steel herself for whatever awaited. She found Evan and Victor in the main living area, both sitting on the floor surrounded by blocks. They'd built an elaborate city, complete with towers and bridges, and Evan was directing Victor on where the next piece should go with the authority of a tiny architect. "Mama!" Evan jumped up when he saw her. "Look what we built! Victor helped, but I made most of the design decisions." "Most of the design decisions," Victor corrected with a slight smile. "I see. It's very impressive. We made a hospital and a fire station and everything, and Victor says tomorrow we can go to the park if you say it's okay." Lena looked at Victor, who stood and brushed off his hands. He'd changed from this morning suit into dark jeans and a simple black shirt that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. "The park?" she asked. "There's one not far from here. Gated, private, safe. I thought Evan might enjoy some outside time. Can we, Mama? Please?" How could she say no to that hopeful face? "Sure, baby, if Victor says it's safe." "It is. I'll have security do a sweep beforehand." Of course he would, because in Victor's world, even a simple trip to the park required military-level planning. "How was work?" Victor asked as Evan returned to the block city, already planning expansions. "Fine. The usual." "You hate it, don't you?" Lena looked at him sharply. "What?" "The diner. The work. You're miserable there." "I'm not miserable. It's a job. You used to have ambitions. You were in school for graphic design when we met. What happened to that?" "Life happened. Pregnancy. A baby. Trying to survive. Design school wasn't exactly compatible with being a single mother." Victor's expression tightened. "It could be now. You could go back, finish your degree." "With what time?" "I have Evan to take care of." "You have me now, and Maria, and whatever other help you need. You could have the life you wanted, Lena. You just have to be willing to accept it." The offer was tempting, dangerously so. Lena had given up on her dreams years ago, had locked them away as impossible luxuries. But having them suddenly within reach again, it made her want things she'd convinced herself she didn't need. "I'll think about it," she said quietly. "That's all I ask." That night, after another bedtime routine where Victor read to Evan, Lena found herself unable to sleep again. She wandered into the living area around midnight, thinking she was alone, only to find Victor standing at the massive windows overlooking the city. He was holding a glass of what looked like whiskey, his posture tense despite the late hour. He didn't turn when she approached, but she knew he'd heard her. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Too much on my mind." "Welcome to my world. I haven't slept well in 5 years." Lena moved to stand beside him, maintaining careful distance. "Because of your business?" "Because of you." He finally looked at her, and the rawness in his expression made her breath catch. "I tried to move on. Had relationships, told myself you were just another woman who'd passed through my life. But none of them were you. None of them understood me the way you did. None of them made me want to be better." "Victor, I'm not saying this to pressure you. I'm saying it because it's true. You asked me yesterday what I wanted. I want my son. But I also want you. Not as a transaction, not as an obligation, but because even after 5 years, even after everything, I still—" He cut himself off, turning back to the window. Lena's heart was pounding. "You still what?" "It doesn't matter. You made it clear where you stand." "You're right. It doesn't matter." But even as she said it, Lena felt the lie in the words. Because standing here in the darkness with Victor, feeling the pull of his presence, she was remembering exactly why she'd fallen for him in the first place. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Lena knew she should leave, go back to her room, maintain the distance she'd insisted was necessary. Instead, she found herself staying, drawn to Victor's presence like a moth to flame despite knowing how badly she could get burned. "Tell me about these 5 years," Victor said finally, his voice low. "Not the facts. Not the logistics of how you survived. Tell me what it was really like." Lena wrapped her arms around herself, the question cutting deeper than she'd expected. "It was hard. Terrifying sometimes. I was alone in a city where I knew no one, pregnant, running out of money. I got the job at the diner when I was 6 months along. My boss, Jerry, he took pity on me. Didn't ask questions when I couldn't provide references. You could have come back. No, I couldn't. Because the moment I walked back into your world, I would have lost myself completely. You would have taken over, made every decision, wrapped me up in protection so tight I couldn't breathe. Victor's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. They both knew she was right. When Evan was born, Lena continued, her voice softening, I was alone. No family, no friends. Just me and a midwife in a clinic that barely qualified as medical. And when they put him in my arms for the first time, when I saw those eyes, your eyes, I cried for hours. Because he was so perfect and so beautiful, and because you weren't there to see him. She heard Victor's breath catch, saw his knuckles go white around his glass. I wanted to hate you, she whispered. Wanted to convince myself that leaving was entirely your fault, that you were this monster who didn't deserve to know his son. But every time Evan smiled, every milestone he hit, I thought about you. Wondered if you'd be proud. Wondered what you would say, how you would react. Lena, I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I'm telling you because you asked what it was really like. It was lonely and hard and filled with regret. But it was also mine. My choices, my struggles, my victories. And I was terrified that if I came back, I'd lose that. I'd become an extension of you again instead of my own person. Victor set his glass down on the window ledge with careful precision, then turned to face her fully. Is that what you think you were to me? An extension, property? Weren't I? No. The word was fierce. You were the only person in my life who wasn't afraid to tell me when I was wrong, who challenged me, who saw past the power and the reputation to the man underneath. You were never property, Lena. You were... He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. You were everything. The admission hung in the air between them, raw and honest. Lena felt tears prick her eyes because she'd never heard Victor speak like this, never seen him this vulnerable. Then why did it feel like I was drowning? She asked softly. Why did I wake up every morning feeling like I was disappearing? Because I'm an idiot who didn't know how to love you without trying to control you. Victor moved closer, and Lena found herself rooted to the spot, unable to retreat. I grew up in a world where control equals safety, where showing weakness gets you killed. I didn't know how to be with you without applying those same rules, and I lost you because of it. Victor, let me finish. He was close enough now that she could see the flecks of lighter color in his dark eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his body. These 5 years taught me something. Power means nothing if you're alone. Money means nothing if you have no one to share it with. I built an empire, Lena. I have more resources and influence than I ever dreamed of, and every bit of it felt empty because you weren't there. You're romanticizing the past. We fought constantly toward the end, because you were trying to tell me something I was too stubborn to hear, that you needed space to be yourself, that my protection was becoming a prison. I hear you now. And I'm asking, begging if I have to, for a chance to prove I can do better. Lena's heart was racing, her resolve crumbling under the intensity of his gaze. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You, saying all the right things, making me want to believe you've changed. I have changed. Have you? Really? Because from where I'm standing, you're still making unilateral decisions, still using your power to control situations, still assuming you know what's best for everyone. Victor's expression tightened. I'm protecting my family. That's different. Is it? Or are you just justifying the same behavior with different reasoning? What do you want from me, Lena? The frustration in his voice was palpable. You want me to apologize for having security drive you to work? For making sure my son has everything he needs? For trying to create a safe environment for both of you? I want you to ask instead of demand. I want you to include me in decisions instead of presenting me with done deals. I want to feel like a partner, not a subordinate. Fine. I'm asking now. Victor's voice dropped, became intimate. What do you want? From this situation, from me, from us sharing this space and raising Evan together. Tell me what you need and I'll do everything in my power to make it happen. The question was too big, too loaded with implications. Lena felt herself trembling, caught between desire and fear, between the pull of what they'd had and the terror of repeating past mistakes. I need time, she managed. I need space to figure out who I am now, separate from who I was when I was with you. I need to know I can stand on my own even while we're under the same roof. Okay, Victor nodded slowly. Time and space, I can do that. But Lena, I need something from you too. What? Honesty. Complete honesty. No more running when things get hard. No more making decisions about our son without talking to me first. And no more pretending there's nothing between us when we both know that's a lie. Before Lena could respond, before she could even process what he was saying, Victor closed the distance between them. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone in a gesture so familiar it made her ache. I'm going to kiss you now, he said quietly. And you can tell me to stop. You can walk away. But I need you to know that I haven't stopped wanting you. Not for a single day in 5 years. Lena knew she should stop him, knew she should maintain the boundaries she'd insisted on, keep things professional and distant for Evan's sake. But when Victor's mouth descended on hers, when she felt the familiar heat of his kiss, all her careful resolutions scattered like leaves in the wind. His lips were exactly as she remembered, demanding but tender, taking control while somehow making her feel like an equal participant. His other hand slid to the small of her back, pulling her flesh against him, and Lena's body responded with muscle memory that 5 years hadn't erased. She kissed him back with a desperation that surprised her, her hands fisting in his shirt as if anchoring herself to something solid in a world that had tilted off its axis. This was dangerous, reckless, everything she'd promised herself she wouldn't do. But it felt inevitable, like trying to hold back the tide. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. Tell me you didn't feel that, he murmured. Tell me there's nothing left between us. I can't. The admission cost her, but she forced it out. I can't tell you that. Then stop fighting this. Stop pretending we're just two people coexisting for our son's sake. We're more than that. We've always been more than that. More complicated, you mean? Lena pulled back, needing distance to think clearly. Victor, one kiss doesn't change the fundamental problems we had. It doesn't change your world, your business, the danger that follows you everywhere. I know that, but it proves we still have something worth fighting for, or something that will destroy us both if we're not careful. I'll take that risk. Well, I won't. The words came out sharper than Lena intended. I have Evan to think about. I can't just dive back into this and hope it works out. There's too much at stake. Victor's expression shuddered, the vulnerability disappearing behind his usual mask of control. You're right. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. No, I'm sorry. Lena pressed her hands to her face, overwhelmed. I'm sending mixed signals. I know that. It's just, this is all happening so fast. 2 days ago, I thought I'd never see you again. Now we're living together and you're kissing me and I don't know which way is up anymore. Then let's slow down. Victor's voice was carefully neutral now. We focus on Evan, on creating a stable environment for him. Everything else can wait. But even as he said it, Lena could see in his eyes that he didn't believe the words any more than she did. The attraction between them was a living thing, impossible to ignore or suppress. They could pretend to focus solely on co-parenting, but the underlying tension would always be there, waiting to explode. The next 2 weeks fell into an uneasy routine. Victor left early most mornings for business Lena didn't ask about, returning in time for dinner and bedtime with Evan. Lena continued her shifts at the diner despite Victor's obvious disapproval, maintaining that connection to her independent life, even as she became increasingly comfortable in the penthouse. Evan thrived in the new environment. He had his own room, new toys, attention from both parents, and Maria's gentle care during the hours when both Lena and Victor were unavailable. Watching him blossom was bittersweet for Lena, proof that Victor had been right about being able to provide a better life, but also proof that her years of struggling alone had deprived their son of so much. But beneath the surface calm, tension simmered. Victor and Lena were scrupulously polite to each other, careful never to be alone together after that night by the window. They communicated about Evan's needs and schedules with the efficiency of business partners, but the weight of everything unspoken hung between them like a storm cloud. Then one afternoon, everything changed. Lena was at the diner midway through her shift when Marcus appeared in the doorway. His presence was unusual enough that she immediately tensed. "Ms. Cross, I need you to come with me. Now." "What's wrong?" "Is it Evan?" "Evan's fine. He's with Mr. Romano, but there's a situation we need to address immediately." Lena didn't bother explaining to her boss, just grabbed her purse and followed Marcus to the waiting SUV. Her heart was pounding, scenarios racing through her mind. "Tell me what's happening." "A woman came to the building an hour ago. She's demanding to see Mr. Romano, claims she has a relationship with him and wants to know who you are and why you're living in his penthouse." Lena's stomach dropped. "What kind of relationship?" "I don't know the details, but Mr. Romano thought you should be there when he handles it." The ride back felt endless. When they finally arrived, Lena found Victor in the main living area, his posture rigid with barely controlled anger. A woman sat on one of the sofas, stunning, elegant, dressed in designer clothes that screamed money and privilege. She looked up when Lena entered, her eyes cold and assessing. "So this is her," the woman said, her voice dripping with disdain. "The mystery woman who's moved into Victor's space. I have to say I expected someone more impressive." "Isabella, enough." Victor's voice was hard. "Lena, this is Isabella Moretti. We had an arrangement that ended 6 months ago. She seems to think that gives her the right to show up unannounced and make demands." "An arrangement?" Isabella laughed, the sound brittle. "Is that what you're calling it? We were together for 2 years, Victor. I thought we had an understanding. We had an agreement. No commitments, no expectations. You knew what it was from the beginning. And then she shows up." Isabella's gaze raked over Lena with obvious contempt. "Who is she? Some charity case you're feeling guilty about? A former assistant you knocked up?" Lena felt her temper flare. "I'm the mother of his son, and this conversation is none of your business." Isabella's eyes widened, genuine shock replacing the practiced disdain. "Son? You have a son? That's not your concern," Victor said flatly. "What is your concern is that you're in my home uninvited, making demands you have no right to make. We're done, Isabella. We've been done. Accept it and move on." "Move on to what? To playing house with her?" Isabella stood, her composure cracking. "I gave you 2 years, Victor. 2 years of being available whenever you wanted, of not asking questions about your business, of being exactly what you needed. And the moment she shows up, I'm discarded like I never mattered?" "You mattered, but not in the way you seem to think." Victor's voice gentled slightly. "I was always honest with you about what I could offer. If you convinced yourself it was something more, that's not my fault." "Honest?" Isabella's laugh was bitter now. "You want to talk about honesty? Fine. Let's talk about the fact that you've been trying to replace her for 5 years. Every woman you've been with, you were looking for her in them. I knew it. They all knew it. And now here she is, back from wherever she ran to, and you're just going to pretend like nothing happened." The accuracy of Isabella's observation hit Lena like a physical blow. She looked at Victor, saw the truth of it in his face. "This conversation is over," Victor said, his tone brooking no argument. "Marcus will escort you out. If you come back uninvited, if you make any attempt to contact me or my family, there will be consequences. Are we clear?" Isabella's face hardened. "Crystal. But you should know something, Victor. The word's already out on the street that you have a son. People are asking questions. And you know how dangerous curiosity can be in our world." The implied threat made Victor's expression turn lethal. "If anyone even looks at my family wrong, I will hold you personally responsible. Do you understand me, Isabella?" "I didn't tell anyone. But you can't hide a child forever, especially not when he's yours." Isabella grabbed her purse, her movements sharp with anger. "Good luck with your little family. I hope it's worth it when everything falls apart." Marcus appeared to escort her out, and Isabella left without another word. The moment the elevator doors closed, Victor's carefully maintained control shattered. He picked up a crystal decanter from the bar and hurled it against the wall, the crash of breaking glass echoing through the penthouse. "Victor, she's right." His voice was rough, furious. "Word is out about Evan, which means everyone in my world now knows I have a weakness they can exploit." "He's not a weakness. He's your son." "In my world, they're the same thing." Victor turned on her, his eyes blazing. You wanted to know why I was so insistent about security? This is why. Because the moment people know you love something, they start calculating how to use it against you. Lena felt cold fear wash over her. What are we going to do? We're going to make it clear that touching my family is suicide. I'm going to send a message so unambiguous that even the stupidest rival will think twice. What kind of message? Victor's smile was predatory, dangerous. The kind that involves making an example. There's a small-time operator who's been pushing into my territory. Perfect opportunity to demonstrate what happens when someone crosses me. You're going to hurt someone? Kill them? I'm going to protect what's mine. Victor moved closer, and Lena saw the crime boss in full force now. The man who'd built his empire through violence and fear. You wanted honesty? Here it is. My world is brutal. It's bloody. And the only way to keep you and Evan safe is to be more brutal, more bloody than anyone else. So yes, I'm going to make sure everyone knows that my family is untouchable. This is insane. We should just leave. Go somewhere you're not known. Start over. There is nowhere I'm not known, and running would make us look weak, vulnerable. The only way through this is strength. Victor gripped her shoulders, his intensity almost frightening. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Lena wanted to say no, wanted to grab Evan and run like she had 5 years ago, but she looked into Victor's eyes and saw something she hadn't expected, genuine fear beneath the rage. He was terrified for them, for what might happen if he didn't establish absolute dominance. I trust you to protect Evan, she said carefully. I'm not sure I trust your methods. My methods have kept me alive and powerful for 15 years. They'll keep our son safe too. Before Lena could respond, Evan's voice called from his room. Mama, I heard a loud noise. What broke? The reality of their situation hit Lena like a sledgehammer. Her son was growing up in a world where breaking glass and threatening violence were becoming normalized, where his father's solution to danger was more danger, where safety came at the cost of other people's suffering. I'll go check on him, she said quietly, pulling away from Victor's grip. She found Evan in his room, looking worried. Lena gathered him into a hug, breathing in his little boy's smell, feeling the solid warmth of him against her chest. Everything's okay, baby. Victor just accidentally knocked something over. Is he mad? No, sweetheart, just having a bad day. Can I make him feel better? I could draw him a picture. Lena's heart squeezed painfully. Her sweet, empathetic son who wanted to comfort the man who'd just threatened violence as casually as discussing the weather. That's very kind, Evan. I'm sure he'd love that. As Evan settled at his desk with crayons and paper, Lena returned to the living area. Victor was on his phone, his voice cold and clipped as he gave orders she didn't want to understand. When he ended the call, he looked at her with an expression that dared her to judge him. It's done. By tomorrow morning, everyone will know the cost of threatening what's mine. And what exactly will they know, Victor? That you're willing to destroy lives over perceived threats? They'll know that my family is sacred, that anyone who even thinks about using Evan or you to get to me will regret it for whatever brief time they have left to live. Lena wrapped her arms around herself, feeling cold despite the warmth of the penthouse. This is why I left. This casual acceptance of violence, this willingness to hurt people. This is why you're safe now, because I'm willing to do what others won't to protect the people I love. The word hung between them, love. Victor had said it so easily, so naturally, as if it was obvious. But it was the first time he'd used that word about them, about her, in all the years they'd known each other. Don't, Lena whispered. Don't say things like that. Why not? It's true. I love our son, and I still love you despite everything. Despite the 5 years, despite the anger, despite knowing you might never feel the same way. Victor, I'm not asking for anything. I'm just being honest, like you wanted. I love you. I've always loved you. And I will do absolutely anything to keep you and Evan safe, even if that makes me a monster in your eyes. Lena felt tears streaming down her face now, overwhelmed by the intensity of his declaration and the horror of what it meant. Victor loved them, and that love was expressed through violence and control and the kind of power that crushed anything in its way. I need some air, she managed. I need to think. You can't leave the building. Not until I'm sure the security situation is handled. So I'm a prisoner now? You're protected. There's a difference. Is there? Lena moved toward the elevator, because from where I'm standing, it feels exactly the same. She went to the roof garden, a space she'd discovered days ago, filled with carefully tended plants and offering a view of the city that took her breath away. It was one of the few places in Victor's domain that felt peaceful, untainted by the violence and power games that defined everything else. She didn't know how long she stood there, watching the sun set over the city, before she heard footsteps behind her. He drew you this. Victor held out a piece of paper covered in crayon scribbles that vaguely resembled a family, 3 stick figures holding hands. Said it's you and him and me. Together. Lena took the drawing with shaking hands, staring at Evan's innocent representation of what he thought their family was. Happy. United. Simple. He doesn't understand, she said softly. He doesn't know what you really are, what this life really means. No. And if I have my way, he never will. He'll grow up safe and loved and never know the cost of that safety. But I'll know. I'll always know that his happiness is built on other people's suffering. Victor was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, My father was a violent drunk who beat my mother until she stopped fighting back. I grew up watching her disappear piece by piece until there was nothing left but a ghost. When I was 15, I put him in the hospital. When I was 17, I made sure he'd never come back. And I swore that I would never be like him, that I would never use my strength to break the people I loved. Lena turned to look at him, seeing the raw pain in his face. But I broke you anyway, Victor continued. Different methods, same result. I tried to love you by controlling you, by wrapping you up so tight you couldn't breathe. And I lost you because of it. These 5 years I've had a lot of time to think about that. About how the power I worked so hard to build became the very thing that destroyed what mattered most. Victor, I can't change who I am. I can't walk away from my business, from my reputation, from the life I've built. But I can change how I love you, how I treat you. I can give you the freedom I tried to deny you before. I can include you in decisions instead of making them for you. I can be better than my father, better than the man I was 5 years ago. Can you? Lena asked softly. Or are you just saying what I want to hear? I don't know. The honesty in his admission surprised her. I've never tried to be a father before, never tried to balance love with freedom, protection with autonomy. I'll probably screw it up, but I want to try. For Evan. And for you, if you'll let me. Lena looked down at Evan's drawing, at the simple happiness it represented, and felt something in her chest crack open. She was tired of fighting, tired of being afraid, tired of pretending she didn't still feel something for the man standing beside her. One condition, she said finally. Anything. You talk to me. Before you make decisions that affect us. Before you send messages that might put us in danger. Before you do anything in the name of protecting us. You talk to me first. We make decisions together, like actual partners. Victor nodded slowly. I can do that. It won't be easy for me. I'm used to acting fast, making calls without consultation, but I'll try. That's all I'm asking, for you to try. They stood together on the roof as darkness fell over the city, neither touching but somehow closer than they'd been since Lena had walked back into Victor's life. Below them, the city pulsed with life, some of it beautiful, some of it ugly, all of it complicated and messy and real, just like them. The week following Isabella's confrontation brought unexpected changes. Victor, true to his word, began consulting Lena before making decisions. It started small, asking her opinion on Evan's pre-K options instead of simply announcing his choice, discussing the security protocols he wanted to implement rather than just implementing them. Each conversation was stilted at first. Victor clearly struggling against his instinct to command rather than collaborate, but Lena saw the effort and appreciated it. Evan flourished under the attention of both parents. He'd started calling Victor Papa without anyone teaching him to, the word slipping out naturally one morning at breakfast. Lena had watched Victor freeze mid-motion, his coffee cup suspended halfway to his mouth, before a smile transformed his usually guarded expression into something warm and achingly vulnerable. Say that again? Victor had asked softly. What, Papa? Evan had looked up from his pancakes, confused by the reaction. Nothing. I just like hearing it. Now, 3 weeks into their new arrangement, Lena found herself in the uncomfortable position of watching Victor be a genuinely good father. He read to Evan every night without fail, even when business calls ran late. He'd learned to make the dinosaur pancakes Evan loved, mastering the technique with the same focused intensity he applied to everything else. He played endless games of blocks and cars, his deep voice providing sound effects that sent Evan into peals of delighted laughter. And he was patient in a way Lena had never seen him be with anyone else. When Evan had a tantrum over bedtime, Victor didn't raise his voice or demand obedience. He crouched down to Evan's level, speaking quietly until the storm passed. When Evan was scared of a nightmare, Victor sat by his bed until he fell back asleep, his large hand gentle on their son's small back. It was devastating to watch because it proved what Lena had always feared, that Victor could have been part of Evan's life all along, that her son had missed out on this connection because of her choices. The guilt ate at her, especially in quiet moments when she caught Victor looking at Evan with such fierce love it made her chest ache. "You're thinking too hard again," Victor said one evening after Evan was asleep. They'd fallen into a habit of sharing a drink on the terrace after bedtime, a space where they could talk without the pressure of their son's presence. "Just observing." "Observing what?" "You, with Evan. You're good with him." Victor's expression was unreadable. "You sound surprised." "I am, a little. You're so different with him than you are with everyone else." "He's my son. Of course I'm different with him." Victor swirled the whiskey in his glass, watching the amber liquid catch the light. "Every moment I spend with him, I'm acutely aware of the time I missed. 4 years of firsts I can never get back. His first smile, first steps, first words. You got all of that, and I got nothing." The pain in his voice was raw, and Lena felt her ever-present guilt intensify. "I'm sorry. I know you are. And I'm trying not to hold it against you. But sometimes..." He cut himself off, jaw tightening. "Sometimes what?" "Sometimes I look at him and I'm angry all over again, furious that you made that choice without me. And then I feel guilty for being angry because I can see how much you love him, how hard you worked to give him a good life. It's complicated." "Everything about us is complicated," Lena said quietly. They sat in silence for a moment, the city lights twinkling below them like fallen stars. Then Victor said, "I need to tell you something about the Isabella situation." Lena's stomach tightened. "What about it?" "I took care of it, made it clear through certain channels that my family is off limits. There was some pushback from a rival crew, but it's been handled." "Handled how?" "Do you really want to know?" Lena thought about it, weighing her need for honesty against her desire to maintain plausible deniability. Finally, she said, "Yes, I want to know." Victor studied her for a long moment, as if assessing whether she could handle the truth. Then he said, "There was a confrontation. 3 men who thought they could leverage knowledge about Evan to gain advantage in a territory dispute. They were wrong. They're in the hospital now, and they'll carry the scars as a reminder of their mistake. You had them beaten. I had them taught a lesson. There's a difference." "Is there?" Lena heard the echo of her earlier question, the same circular argument they kept having. "Yes, because they're alive. If I'd wanted to send a stronger message, they wouldn't be. I exercised restraint." "Restraint," Lena repeated, the word bitter on her tongue. "That's what you call putting people in the hospital?" "In my world, yes." Victor's voice was calm, factual. "You want me to apologize for protecting our son?" "I won't. Those men knew the risks when they decided to use a child as leverage. They faced the consequences of that choice." Lena wanted to argue, to condemn his actions, but she found she couldn't. Because as much as she hated the violence, she understood the logic behind it. In Victor's world, perceived weakness invited attack. The only way to keep Evan truly safe was to make the cost of threatening him so high that no one would dare try. "I hate that this is our reality," she said softly. "So do I. But it's the reality we have, so we make the best of it." Victor set down his glass and turned to face her fully. "I know this isn't the life you wanted. I know you'd prefer Evan grow up in some peaceful suburb where the biggest threat is a skinned knee from falling off his bike. But that's not an option for us. So we do what we can to give him as normal a childhood as possible while keeping him safe. That's the balance we have to strike. And when he's older, when he starts asking questions about what you do, about why we have security everywhere, about why other kids' fathers don't live like this, then we tell him age-appropriate versions of the truth. We don't lie, but we don't burden him with details he's too young to process. And we make sure he knows he's loved, that both his parents would do anything to protect him. Victor paused. We give him choices we never had. The choice to walk away from this life if he wants. The choice to be something different. Would you really let him walk away? If he wanted nothing to do with your business? Yes. The answer was immediate, certain. I want better for him than I had. If that means he becomes a teacher or a doctor or an artist, then that's what I want too. My empire doesn't need an heir. It just needs to exist long enough to provide for my family. The conviction in his voice surprised Lena. She'd assumed Victor would want to groom Evan to take over eventually, to build a dynasty. Hearing him say otherwise shifted something in her understanding of him. You've really thought about this. I've thought about nothing else for 3 weeks. What kind of father I want to be. What kind of life I want for my son. What kind of man I need to become to give him that life. Victor's eyes met hers, intense and searching. And what kind of relationship I want with his mother. Lena's breath caught. Victor, I know we agreed to focus on co-parenting. I know you need space and time. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't want more. I look at you every day and I remember what we had. And I wonder if we could have it again, but better this time. Healthier. I don't know if we can. Why not? Because people don't really change, Victor. Not fundamentally. You're still the man who solves problems with violence. I'm still the woman who ran instead of fighting for what she wanted. Those core patterns don't just disappear because we want them to. Maybe not. But we can learn new patterns, build new habits, choose differently than we did before. Victor moved closer, and Lena found herself unable to retreat. I'm not the same man I was 5 years ago, Lena. Loss changed me. Loneliness changed me. And becoming a father is changing me still. I'm not saying I'm perfect or that I won't make mistakes, but I'm trying to be better. Doesn't that count for something? It counts for a lot, Lena admitted. But trying isn't the same as succeeding. What happens the first time we have a real disagreement? The first time I make a choice you don't like? Will you revert to your old patterns of control and dominance? I don't know, probably. But you'll call me on it and I'll have to adjust. That's how relationships work, isn't it? We stumble, we course correct, we keep trying. In normal relationships, maybe. But nothing about us is normal. No, Victor agreed, a slight smile playing at his lips. Nothing about us has ever been normal. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't need normal. We just need honest and committed and willing to fight for each other instead of against each other. Before Lena could respond, her phone buzzed with a message. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop. It was from Caroline at the diner. Jerry's selling the diner. New owners taking over next month. Thought you should know. Victor noticed her expression change. What is it? The diner's being sold. I might be out of a job. Good. Good? Lena stared at him in disbelief. I need that job, Victor. It's the one thing that's mine, that I built without you. You don't need it. You haven't needed it since you moved in here. The only reason you're still working there is pride and stubbornness. It's not about need, it's about independence. Independence from what? From me? From the resources I can provide? That's not independence, Lena. That's just refusing help out of spite. The argument escalated quickly, all the careful détente of the past weeks shattering under the weight of their fundamental disagreement. Lena accused Victor of trying to control her life. Victor countered that she was being irrationally attached to struggle for its own sake. They were both raising their voices, neither willing to back down, when Evan appeared in the doorway. Stop fighting. His small voice cut through their argument like a knife. Tears streamed down his face, and his whole body shook with the force of his crying. I don't like it when you fight. Make it stop. Both adults froze, the sight of their terrified son instantly dousing their anger. Lena reached him first, dropping to her knees to pull him into her arms. I'm so sorry, baby. We're sorry. We didn't mean to scare you. You always fight now, Evan sobbed against her shoulder. You say you're not fighting, but you are. I can hear it in your voices. Are you going to leave again, Mama? Are you going to take me away from Papa? The question shattered something in Lena's chest. She looked up at Victor and saw her own devastation reflected in his face. No, sweetheart. No, I'm not going to leave, I promise. But you're mad at each other. That's what happens when people are mad. They leave. Victor crouched down beside them, his large hand gentle on Evan's back. Hey, buddy, look at me. He waited until Evan's tear-filled eyes met his. Your mama and I were having a disagreement. Adults do that sometimes. But that doesn't mean anyone's leaving. We're a family now, and families stick together even when they don't agree about everything. Promise? I promise. Your mama's not going anywhere, and neither am I. We're all staying right here together. Even if you're still mad? Even then. Because being mad at someone doesn't mean you stop loving them. Evan sniffled, processing this. Then he looked at Lena. Do you love Papa, Mama? The question hung in the air, impossible to avoid or deflect. Lena felt Victor's gaze on her, waiting for her answer. She could lie, could deflect, could tell Evan that love was complicated and he'd understand when he was older. But looking at her son's tear-stained face, at the desperate hope in his eyes for his parents to be okay, she found herself incapable of anything but truth. Yes, she whispered. I do. She felt Victor's sharp intake of breath, saw the flash of hope and vulnerability in his eyes before he shuttered it. Evan, satisfied with the answer, relaxed slightly in her arms. Then it's okay if you fight sometimes. Teacher says people who love each other can still disagree, but you have to say sorry after. You're absolutely right, Lena looked at Victor. I'm sorry for yelling. I'm sorry too. Victor's voice was rough with emotion. We'll do better. Both of us. They got Evan settled back in bed, both parents staying until he fell asleep. When they finally returned to the terrace, the earlier argument felt distant and unimportant compared to what had just been revealed. Did you mean it? Victor asked quietly. What you told Evan. Lena knew she could backtrack, claim she'd only said it to comfort their son. But she was tired of lying, tired of pretending her feelings were simpler than they were. Yes. I never stopped loving you, Victor. Even when I hated you, even when I was terrified of you, I still loved you. That was the problem. I loved you so much I was losing myself, and I didn't know how to stay and keep my identity intact. And now? Now I'm still figuring it out, but I think... She paused, gathering courage. I think maybe we could try. Really try. Not just coexist for Evan's sake. But it has to be different this time. You have to actually let me in. Let me be part of decisions. Trust me to be strong enough to handle your world. I do trust you. You're one of the strongest people I know. You survived 5 years alone with a child, built a life from nothing, kept going even when it must have been impossibly hard. If that's not strength, I don't know what is. Then prove it. Stop trying to protect me from everything. Stop making unilateral decisions about my life. Treat me like a partner, not a possession. Victor was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. Then he said, The diner. You're right that I shouldn't have dismissed your concerns about losing the job. So let's talk about it properly. Why is it important to you to keep working there? The question, asked without judgment or agenda, surprised her. Because it's the one thing I built on my own. When I had nothing, when I was pregnant and alone and terrified, Jerry gave me a chance. That job represents my ability to survive, to provide for myself and Evan. Giving it up feels like admitting I can't make it without you. But you don't have to make it without me. We're together now. My resources are your resources. In theory, yes. But what happens if we don't work out? If we try this relationship thing and it falls apart, then I'm back to square one, except now I've given up everything I built independently. Understanding dawned on Victor's face. You're keeping an escape route open in case you need to run again. Can you blame me? Last time I left, I had nothing. No safety net, no backup plan. It was terrifying. I don't want to be in that position again. Okay, I understand that. So what if we created a real safety net? Not a job that barely pays enough to survive, but actual financial security that's yours regardless of what happens between us. What do you mean? A trust fund in your name. Enough money that you'd never have to worry about supporting yourself or Evan, no matter what. Completely separate from my accounts, no strings attached. Would that give you the security you need to let go of the diner job? Lena stared at him, shocked by the offer. You'd do that? Just give me access to that much money? It's not giving you anything. It's ensuring the mother of my child is taken care of, and it removes the financial power imbalance between us. You won't stay with me because you have to. You'll stay because you want to. That's a lot of trust. You trusted me with our son. I can trust you with money. Victor's smile was slight but genuine. Besides, you're not going to run off to Tahiti and abandon Evan. You're too good a mother for that. The offer was tempting, solving the exact problem that had been plaguing Lena. But accepting it felt like crossing a line, admitting she was willing to build a life fully entangled with Victor's again. I need to think about it, she said finally. Take all the time you need. The offer stands whenever you're ready. They stood together in comfortable silence for a while. The earlier tension dissipated. Finally, Victor said, You should know something else. About the security situation. Lena tensed. What about it? Word is spread effectively. No one's going to come after Evan or you. But there are still risks inherent in my business, and I need you to be aware of them. There's a shipment coming in next week that some people aren't happy about. Nothing directly threatening to us, but it's going to cause ripples. What kind of shipment? Victor hesitated, clearly weighing how much to tell her. Then he seemed to make a decision. Weapons, high-end, military grade. Normally I don't deal in arms, but this is a favor for an ally, and the profit margin is substantial. It'll shore up our position significantly. Our position. My position. But it affects you and Evan by extension. If something goes wrong, if there's an attempt to intercept or steal the shipment, there could be violence. I'm telling you this because you asked to be included in decisions that affect our family. This affects our family. Lena felt sick. And you're doing it anyway? The deal is already in motion. Backing out now would make me look weak, unreliable. That's more dangerous long-term than seeing the deal through. So we just wait and hope no one gets killed? We prepare for contingencies and hope for the best. That's all we can ever do. The casual acceptance of potential violence made Lena's skin crawl. But this was Victor's world, the world she'd chosen to re-enter when she agreed to stay. She couldn't change him or his business. All she could do was decide whether she could live with it. Will you be there at the shipment? Yes, I need to oversee it personally to ensure everything goes smoothly. And if it doesn't go smoothly, if there's trouble, then I handle it. That's what I do, Lena. I handle problems so they don't come home to you and Evan. I hate this. I know, but you understand why it's necessary? I understand that in your world, it's necessary. I'm not sure I'll ever fully accept it. Fair enough? Victor moved closer, his hand coming up to cup her face. But you're trying. That's all I ask. You're trying to understand, to accept what you can and be honest about what you can't. That's more than anyone else has ever given me. Victor, I love you, Lena. I've loved you for 7 years. And I'm going to keep loving you even if you never fully accept my world. Even if we keep having the same arguments over and over, because you're worth it. Our family is worth it. This time when he kissed her, Lena didn't pull away. She kissed him back with all the pent-up longing and fear and hope she'd been carrying for 5 years. His arms came around her, pulling her close, and she felt the solid strength of him, the promise of protection and partnership, and something that might actually work if they could both be brave enough to try. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me, he murmured. Not just for Evan. Stay with me because you want to. Because you believe we can make this work. Lena thought about all the reasons she should say no. The violence, the danger, the fundamental incompatibility of their values. But she also thought about Evan's joy when both his parents were present. About the way Victor looked at her like she was the only person in the world who mattered. About the possibility of building something real and lasting if they could both be willing to compromise and grow. I'm staying, she said softly. I'm scared and I'm not sure this will work. But I'm staying. We'll figure it out together. Victor's smile was brilliant, transformative. He pulled her close again, holding her like she was something precious and breakable. Together, he agreed. Whatever comes, we face it together. The night of the shipment arrived with unseasonable warmth, the kind of humidity that made the city feel restless and alive. Lena stood at the penthouse windows watching Victor prepare to leave, her stomach tight with anxiety she couldn't quite shake. He was dressed differently than usual, dark tactical clothing instead of his customary suits, his movements economical and focused as he checked weapons she pretended not to see. "You don't have to go yourself," she said, knowing even as the words left her mouth that they were pointless. "Yes, I do. This deal is too important to delegate." Victor slid a gun into a holster at his back, the gesture casual and practiced. "Marcus will stay here with you and Evan. Extra security is positioned throughout the building. You'll be perfectly safe." "I'm not worried about us. I'm worried about you." Victor crossed to her, his hands settling on her shoulders. "I've done this 100 times before. I know how to handle myself." "That doesn't make me less worried." "I know." He kissed her forehead, a gesture that had become familiar over the past week since they'd officially decided to try being together. "But I'll be back before dawn, and then we can start planning that family trip Evan keeps asking about." Evan had been lobbying for a beach vacation, his 4-year-old imagination captured by pictures of sand and waves in a book Victor had bought him. The idea of the three of them somewhere peaceful and normal had grown increasingly appealing to Lena as the days passed. "Be careful," she said, gripping his shirt. "Please." "Always am." Victor kissed her properly this time, deep and thorough, as if memorizing the taste of her. When he pulled back, his dark eyes were intense. "I love you. I love you too. Come home safe." After he left, Lena checked on Evan, sleeping peacefully, clutching his stuffed rabbit, before settling in the living room with a book she couldn't focus on. The minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness. Marcus stood his post near the elevator, professional and silent, while Lena tried not to imagine all the things that could go wrong. Around midnight, her phone buzzed. A text from Victor. "Shipment secured, heading back soon." Relief flooded through her, tension she hadn't fully acknowledged releasing from her shoulders. She was about to text back when she heard it, a soft sound from the hallway leading to Evan's room. Probably nothing. Maybe Maria had come up to check something, but something about the quality of the sound made Lena's instincts scream. She stood quietly, moving toward the hallway, and saw a shadow that didn't belong. A man, dressed in black, moving with silent purpose toward Evan's door. Lena's scream tore through the penthouse. "Marcus!" Everything happened at once. The intruder spun toward her, pulling a gun. Marcus burst from his position, weapon already drawn. Lena dove for Evan's room, her only thought protecting her son. She heard gunshots, impossibly loud in the enclosed space, and Marcus shouting into his radio for backup. She slammed Evan's door shut and locked it, then grabbed their son from his bed. He woke crying, terrified by the noise and his mother's panic. "It's okay, baby. It's okay. We're okay." Lena carried him into his bathroom, the most interior room with the fewest entry points, and locked that door too. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone and called Victor. He answered on the first ring. "Lena, what's wrong?" "Someone's here. In the penthouse. Marcus is—" "There were gunshots, Victor. Someone tried to get to Evan." The silence on the other end was more terrifying than shouting would have been. When Victor spoke again, his voice was ice and fury. "Are you safe right now? Where are you?" "Evan's bathroom. Door's locked. I have him. Stay there. Don't open the door for anyone except me or Marcus. I'm 10 minutes away. Backup is already mobilizing." A pause, then softer. "I need you to stay calm, Lena. Can you do that?" "Yes." She pulled Evan closer, covering his ears as more sounds came from beyond the doors, shouting, running footsteps, what might have been more gunfire. "Hurry. I'm coming. Nothing will touch you or our son. I promise you that." The next minutes were the longest of Lena's life. She sat on the bathroom floor with Evan in her lap, singing softly to him to cover the sounds of whatever was happening beyond their locked doors. She thought about every choice that had led to this moment, leaving Victor, coming back, agreeing to stay. Had she made a terrible mistake? Had her desire for this relationship, this family, put their son in danger? Then she heard Victor's voice, loud and commanding. "Lena, it's me. Open the door." She stumbled to her feet, still holding Evan, and unlocked the bathroom door with shaking hands. Victor stood there, his face a mask of controlled fury, blood splattered on his tactical gear, though he didn't appear injured. Behind him, she could see Marcus and several other security personnel, and what looked like two men in restraints on the floor. "Are you hurt?" Victor's hands were immediately on her, checking for injuries with gentle urgency. "Either of you?" "No, we're okay. Scared, but okay." Lena felt tears streaming down her face now that the immediate danger had passed. "What happened?" "Later. First, let's get you both somewhere secure." Victor lifted Evan from her arms, and their son immediately buried his face in his father's neck, small body shaking with residual fear. "Hey, buddy, you're safe now. Papa's got you." They were moved to Victor's personal quarters, a space Lena had never entered before, with reinforced walls and what appeared to be a safe room built into the structure. Victor settled Evan on the bed, the little boy refusing to let go of his father's shirt. "I want to stay with you and Mama," Evan said, his voice small and frightened. "Don't want to be alone." "You won't be. We're all staying together tonight." Victor looked at Lena. "All of us." It took another hour before Evan finally fell asleep between them, exhausted by fear and adrenaline. Only then did Victor carefully extract himself and gesture for Lena to follow him into the adjoining sitting room, leaving the door open so they could see Evan sleeping. "Tell me everything," Lena said, her voice steadier now but still edged with fear. "Who were they? How did they get in?" Victor's expression was granite. Two men hired by a rival organization. They bypassed security using credentials that should have been impossible to acquire. Someone inside my organization gave them access. "Inside? You mean someone you trusted? Someone who will regret that choice for whatever brief time they have left." Victor's voice was cold, absolute. "But that's not the important part. The important part is this never should have happened. My security should have been impenetrable. Instead, you and Evan were put at risk in what was supposed to be the safest place in the city." Lena saw something she'd never seen in Victor before, genuine fear beneath the anger. He'd been terrified, she realized, terrified of losing them. "But we're okay. Marcus stopped them. You got here in time." "Barely. If you hadn't screamed when you did, if Marcus had been even seconds slower—" Victor cut himself off, his hands curling into fists. "I can't do this, Lena. I can't put you through this, either of you." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe you were right 5 years ago. Maybe this life, my life, is too dangerous. Maybe the best thing I can do for you and Evan is let you go somewhere safe, somewhere my enemies can't use you against me." "Victor, no. I love you both too much to be the reason you get hurt, or worse." Victor's voice cracked slightly. "Tonight I was driving back thinking about beach vacations and bedtime stories and all the normal things I want to give Evan. And then I get your call and realize that normal isn't possible for us. Not while I'm who I am." Lena stood and moved to him, gripping his face between her hands and forcing him to look at her. "Listen to me. What happened tonight was terrifying, but it wasn't your fault, and I'm not leaving. We're not leaving. You should. You should take Evan and go somewhere I can provide for you financially, but where you'll be safe from this world." "No. We're a family, Victor. We face things together, remember? That's what you said. That's what we promised each other." "That was before Before what? Before we faced actual danger? This is your world. There will always be danger. But there will also always be protection. You protect us. And we choose to stay with you despite the risks because we love you." Victor stared at her, something raw and vulnerable in his expression. "You could have been killed tonight. Evan could have been taken or hurt, but we weren't, because you have good people protecting us, because I was alert, because we were prepared." Lena's voice was firm, certain. "I'm not some fragile thing that will break at the first sign of trouble, Victor. I survived 5 years alone. I can survive this too. We can survive this together." "You're sure?" "Because once I recommit to this, once I stop trying to push you away for your own good, I won't be able to let you go again. You'll be mine, Lena. Completely. My family, my responsibility, my everything." "I'm sure. We're sure." Lena kissed him, pouring everything she felt into it, love and fear and determination and hope. We're not going anywhere. Victor pulled her close, holding her like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. Against her hair, he murmured, I'm going to make changes. Complete security overhaul. The person who betrayed us will be dealt with. And I'm going to start transitioning some of my business interests to legitimate enterprises. Not overnight, but gradually. I want Evan to inherit something clean when he's older, not the bloody mess I've built. You'd do that? For you and him? I'd do anything. Victor pulled back to look at her. I can't walk away from everything immediately. That would cause chaos and make us more vulnerable, not less. But over time, I can shift things. Build something different, something safer. That's all I can ask. Lena rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. We'll figure it out together. All of it. They stayed like that for a long moment before returning to the bed where Evan slept. Both parents lay on either side of him, their hands meeting over his small body, fingers intertwining. The next morning brought harsh sunlight and hard decisions. Victor called a meeting with his inner circle, the people he trusted most, and systematically identified and removed the person who'd facilitated the breach. Lena didn't ask for details about what happened to the traitor. Some things she was better off not knowing. What she did witness was Victor implementing sweeping changes. New security protocols, background checks on everyone with access to the building, a complete restructuring of who knew what about his family. He moved with ruthless efficiency, and Lena saw the crime boss in full force, commanding, strategic, absolutely merciless with those who threatened what was his. But she also saw him with Evan that evening, patient and gentle, as he explained that sometimes bad people try to do bad things, but that's why they have good people protecting them. He didn't sugarcoat or lie, but he framed it in terms a 4-year-old could understand and not be traumatized by. Are the bad people gone now? Evan asked, sitting in Victor's lap. Yes, and we've made sure they can't come back. Because you're strong? Because I love you and your mama more than anything in the world, and people who love each other protect each other. I love you too, Papa. And Mama. Evan reached out to pull Lena into their embrace. We're a family. Yes, we are. The best family. Over the following weeks, life gradually returned to a new normal. Lena accepted Victor's offer of the trust fund, finally letting go of the diner job when the new owners took over. It felt strange at first, not having that tangible connection to her independent life, but she found other ways to maintain her identity. She enrolled in online classes to finish her graphic design degree. She started freelancing, building a portfolio, creating something that was hers while still being part of their family unit. Victor made good on his promise to transition his business interests. He started legitimate investment firms, real estate development companies, technology ventures. The illegal activities didn't stop immediately. He'd been right that walking away cold would cause chaos, but they gradually diminished as he built alternatives. It was a slow process, but Lena could see the genuine effort, and their relationship deepened. They learned how to fight productively, how to disagree without destroying each other. Victor learned to ask instead of demand, to include Lena in decisions, to trust her strength. Lena learned to accept protection without feeling suffocated, to appreciate Victor's world while maintaining her own identity within it. 3 months after the break-in, Victor came home early one evening with an unusual expression on his face. Lena looked up from where she was helping Evan with an art project, immediately alert to his mood. Everything okay? More than okay. Can we talk privately? Lena got Evan settled with Maria, then followed Victor to the terrace, their space for important conversations. He was holding something small, and Lena's heart began to race when she realized what it was. A ring box. Before you panic, Victor said, seeing her expression, I know this is fast. I know we're still figuring things out. But hear me out. Lena nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. 5 years ago, I lost you because I didn't know how to love you properly. I tried to own you instead of partner with you. I failed you, failed us, and I've had to live with that failure every day since. Victor opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring that caught the light like captured stars. These past months with you and Evan have been the happiest of my life. Not because everything's perfect, it's not, but because we're building something real, something honest, something that can last. Victor, I'm not asking you to marry me right now. I'm asking if you'll consider being my wife someday. When you're ready. When we've built enough trust and foundation that you know it's not about control or possession, it's about commitment, about choosing each other every day for the rest of our lives. Lena looked at the ring, then at Victor's face, so open, so vulnerable, so completely different from the guarded man she'd known before. She thought about everything they'd been through, every fight and reconciliation, every moment of fear and every moment of joy. She thought about Evan asking if they were a family, about the life they were building together. "Yes," she said softly. "Not right now, but someday, when we're both ready. Yes." Victor's smile was brilliant, transformative. He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Not too tight, not too loose, just right. "I'll spend every day earning this," he promised. "Earning your trust, your love, your willingness to share your life with me. You already have my love. The rest we'll build together." They kissed as the sun set over the city. Two people who'd found their way back to each other despite impossible odds. Behind them, through the window, they could see Evan playing with Maria, safe and happy and loved. 6 months later, on a private beach far from the city's violence and chaos, Lena Cross became Lena Romano. It was a small ceremony, just immediate family and the closest friends, the people who'd supported them through the hardest times. Evan stood proudly beside Victor, holding the rings with serious concentration, dressed in a miniature version of his father's suit. When the officiant pronounced them married, Evan cheered loudly, making the small gathering laugh. Victor kissed his bride with thorough enthusiasm, while their son danced around them with joy. The reception was simple: good food, better wine, music playing over speakers set up in the sand. Lena danced with Victor as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, feeling more at peace than she'd ever thought possible. "What are you thinking?" Victor asked, his arms secure around her waist. "That we made it. Against all odds, through everything, we actually made it. We did more than that. We built something neither of us thought was possible, a real partnership, a real family. A real future," Lena added, resting her head against his chest. "One where Evan grows up seeing his parents love each other and work together. Where he learns that people can change, can choose to be better." Speaking of Evan, Victor nodded toward where their son was teaching Maria's grandson how to build a sandcastle, his small face serious and focused. "Have you noticed he's been drawing a lot of pictures with 4 people lately instead of 3? Lena had noticed. "He wants a sibling." "How do you feel about that?" "I think—" Lena looked up at her husband, seeing the hope and question in his dark eyes. "I think maybe we should consider it. Not right away, but someday." "Someday soon?" "Maybe." Lena smiled. "We'll see." Victor pulled her closer, and they swayed to the music as the sun dipped below the horizon. Around them, the people they loved most celebrated their union, and Lena felt the weight of the past finally lifting. She'd run from this man 5 years ago, terrified of losing herself. Now she was running toward him, secure in the knowledge that he would catch her, support her, choose her every day. They weren't perfect. Their life would never be completely normal or free from complications. Victor's business still had edges of darkness, and there would always be risks inherent in his world. But they'd learned how to face those challenges together, how to build something strong enough to weather any storm. Later that night, after the celebration wound down and Evan was asleep in their beach house, Victor and Lena walked along the shore hand in hand. The moon cast silver light across the waves, and the only sounds were the surf and their footsteps in the sand. "Thank you," Victor said quietly. "For what?" "For giving me another chance. For trusting me with our son. For believing I could be better than I was. Thank you for proving me right," Lena squeezed his hand. "And for fighting for us even when I was fighting against you. I'll always fight for us. For this. For our family. I know. That's why I'm here." They stood at the water's edge, letting the waves lap at their feet. Two people who'd found their way through darkness to light. Behind them was a past filled with mistakes and pain and loss. Ahead was a future built on choice and commitment and love earned through trial. Lena Cross had spent 5 years running from Victor Romano, convinced that loving him meant losing herself. Now, as Lena Romano, she understood the truth. Loving him didn't diminish her. It completed her. Not because she needed him to be whole, but because together they were stronger, better, more capable of building the life they wanted than either could be alone. "Ready to go back?" Victor asked, nodding toward the beach house where their son slept. "Yes, let's go home." Because that's what they'd built together, despite everything. A home. Not a place, but a feeling. The certainty that no matter what came, they would face it together. The knowledge that they'd chosen each other, not out of need or fear or obligation, but out of genuine love and trust and commitment. As they walked back up the beach, Victor pulled Lena close, pressing a kiss to her temple. She leaned into his strength, secure in the knowledge that this was where she belonged. Not because she was trapped or controlled, but because she'd chosen it. Because he'd proven himself worthy of that choice every single day. Their story had started in collision and conflict, in fear and fleeing. But it was ending, or rather beginning anew, in love and choice and the quiet certainty of two people who'd fought for each other and won. And in the beach house, Evan slept peacefully, safe in the knowledge that his parents loved him and each other, that his family was whole and strong and permanent, that tomorrow would bring new adventures, new joys, new moments of the ordinary magic that made life worth living. This was their happy ending. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real and honest and earned through struggle and sacrifice, and the courage to keep trying even when failure seemed inevitable. This was love, messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. This was family, chosen and cherished and protected with everything they had. This was home, not a place on a map, but the space they created together, where three hearts beat as one and the future stretched bright with possibility. And it was, finally and completely, enough.